Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar on client acquisition strategies. We are just waiting for another 30 seconds or so for further attendees to arrive, and then we shall make a start. Right, hello again. Welcome again to the webinar on client acquisition strategies. Just in terms of word of housekeeping, please feel free to pose your questions over the questions functions on the webinar, and we will answer them at the end of the webinar. As a word of introduction, I've got here with me Mitch Young, co-founder of Fusion Consulting.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And I've got Kishan Bhatt, Managing Director of Fusion Law.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And myself, Florian Pixner, Managing Director of Wealth Monitor. How did this webinar come about? We have lots of good discussions with our subscribers around how to be successful in client acquisition. So we took the topic outside the meeting room and into a webinar to sort of broaden the scope of listeners. If we go to the agenda, which can you go on further? Thank you. I want to talk about some of the work Mitch and his team has done with our subscribers on approaching potential clients through LinkedIn and other channels. Then a few words on what effective methods increase business through Wealth Monitor. And then I want to go through some examples of our subscribers and the results they have had from high net worth individual campaigns that have worked for them. Before we go into the first area of client acquisition, though, around LinkedIn and professional social media, let's spend a minute on why this topic has such gravitas for Wealth Monitor. If you look at how Wealth Monitor has been compiled and how our content originates, we are part of the Acris Group. So it's really from sort of journalistical background. So we've got 600 journalists and analysts, full-time journalists and analysts all around the globe. And the initial idea in 1999 was really to come up with content around mergers and acquisition and provide that to the financial community. Now, out of that, we produce a lot of what we call proprietary intelligence. So which companies are going to be up for sale, which private equities are investing in certain companies. And out of that, there's liquidity events resulting. So liquidity means the company is being sold, and ultimately there's always someone benefiting on the target company. And if this beneficiary is an individual, they often stand to benefit a huge amount of private wealth and become a high net worth individual, and therefore then become relevant for our subscriber to get in touch with to try to acquire that high net worth individual as a client. So I'm not going to go into the system in great depth. We can have a separate session on this or book a session with our client relationship managers. But just a few words on the workflow. So most of you will be familiar with how to drill down to the essence of relevant prospecting opportunities on Wealth Monitor. And I will touch on this later again in the sections of the webinar on increasing business and the best practices on how to do this. But my point here is that you really need meaningful data. And by meaningful, I mean relevant to you and your organization. It's absolutely critical here that when you are dealing with high net worth individuals, that your approach is completely tailored to the individual. It sounds pretty obvious, and you all know this, so I'm not teaching you anything new. But when speaking to high net worth individuals, we hear the same theme over and over again. Namely, that the communication is mainly about how unique the client offering and how unique the investment proposition is and how unique the organization itself is. The fact that the client is unique doesn't come across often very well because the advisor simply doesn't know enough about the high net worth individuals. You really need to know your prospect And this is where you need good intelligence on high net worth individuals. So let's have a look at how to get some of that crucial knowledge, a stage where it is most difficult to obtain, yet it's most important and crucial to have that information to differentiate yourself from other approaches. Because once you have the relationship with the client for many years, you should know everything about the client to serve them well and to have his trust. But when you meet your client, or your potential client for the first time, it's a tricky one to pull off, especially given the time constraints we all face with KPIs to fulfill and too much time spent on admin and MiFID II and all sorts of GDPR hoops to jump through. So preparation is really key here. You want to portray to the prospect that you have dedicated real time and effort, into the situation. The feedback from our clients has been that the standard script really won't do here when dealing with high net worth individuals. You really need to do your homework to understand more about the person, what their concerns might be, and what will make them warm, so you can warm to them as a person and they warm to your organization as well. And once you've done this, the channel that you use to approach the client is really secondary, and we'll come to that later on again on what high net worth individuals have told us in terms of what they prefer. It sort of really came about that really is secondary if the approach is right. So where we assist in bridging the connection between you and the prospect, on Wealth Monitor, our analysts spend at least an hour on each individual that we present to you via our email alerts and platform. So information that what has led to selling the business to the sales process, who is the corporate advisor, and what is the professional journey or the history of that individual. So if you can convey that knowledge back to the client, they will be assured that you took some care in your preparation, you've done your homework, and you're giving a personalized touch. Because how are they going to trust your investment approach if you haven't really done your homework on just the simple fact of approaching that client? And don't underestimate the soft facts such as age and hobbies and information available on social networks, which makes it all the more personable. All of these insights are on one page you see here in the background. We aim to have as much information as possible on the individual, on each profile, so you really know everything there is to know about the individual before you make that first contact. So one aspect of the high net worth individual profile is the LinkedIn button that you can see here. And I think at that stage it's best to pass over to Mitch, who's far more qualified on the technical process on how to reach out in conjunction to Wealth Monitor than I am.
Thanks, Florian, and good afternoon, everybody, again. Just as a small way of background, I'm a qualified tax advisor, built up a network of high net worth individuals and been advising them internationally for a number of years. When we founded Fusion Consulting, I saw there was a gap in the market to assist private client advisors and professionals with their social media strategy, business development, and hence the strategy in which we're telling you we know that's worked, and it's worked for myself and for a number of our clients. So just starting from the beginning, just looking at LinkedIn as a social media entity, it's fair to say that in today's society, certainly in the professional service space, that LinkedIn is a must for all professional private client advisors. Some stats here which have been taken from LinkedIn say that LinkedIn has over 500 million users, of which 40% are on there daily. 6.1 million LinkedIn users are at senior level influencers, and 40 million are in a decision-making process position. And certainly what we found through using Wealth Monitor and our search facilities is that a lot of high net worths can be found on LinkedIn, and certainly, and I'll come on to this point, the new wave of entrepreneurs and people who are coming into wealth at certainly a younger age are on there and beginning to make decisions about who their professional advisors should be via social media. So not only is it important to be on LinkedIn, have a good profile, but be active from an intermediary point of view, but from a new client acquisition point of view, having a software like Wealth Monitor is gold dust when you're searching for high net worth individuals on LinkedIn. So just moving on, the next few slides, what we're going to go through is how we help our clients, and when I mean our clients, I mean Wealth Monitor's subscribers, to utilize and really use their subscription and get the best out of it. Because what we found is that a lot of investment advisors, managing partners, know the power of the information in what they're receiving from Wealth Monitor, but they may not have the skill set or experience or time to then go on daily onto LinkedIn and to know best practice. So we've collaborated in providing this service essentially, and our aim is to increase the productivity and leverage investment in Wealth Monitor in order to generate high quality business development opportunities for investment managers, private bankers, financial advisors and other professionals. And essentially our proposition is one where we take over the profile of the managing partner or the investment advisor. And what we do is we harvest and manage the Wealth Monitor data, identify the individuals who have come into wealth, connect with them using a very personalized messaging. The first initial message you can send on LinkedIn can now be tailored, and we send that as approved by the firm or organization, and then we send a second message with a view of arranging a call or a meeting. Because what we found is, whilst the traditional methods of sending a letter in a post or a document or an invitation to an event is good, modern day methods in terms of accessing someone via LinkedIn, where a message can pop up on their mobile phone, so they could be anywhere in the world, and you just catch them at the right time, means they think of you, and the response rate has been very high. And it's not only just about that initial message. What we do, we've helped deliver status updates. So the high net worth individuals, once they're connected with you on LinkedIn, will see over a period of time that you're a thought leader, and that they're understanding more about your firm and organization via regular receiving status updates. So aside from that, and I'll come on to that, we produce a high level report every week and every month, and from a intermediary point of view, whereby if you've used Wealth Monitor before and the LinkedIn button, sometimes you may give up if you can't find that individual automatically. What we've done for other clients is actually use Wealth Monitor to find who their main client advisors are, be it in the legal accounting space, and we've connected with them, introduced them to the advisor, who has then introduced them to the high net worth individual. So it's very well thought out, targeted approach, which delivers results. And sometimes if they don't appear straight away as a third plus connection, once we've connected with the intermediaries, they sometimes appear, and then we can connect. So this is just a slide really touching upon what I was talking about in terms of the actual practicalities of what we do. So we're managing the personal LinkedIn. We update everyone's profile to ensure that it's an all-star status, So really, you want to go onto your LinkedIn, and regardless of whether you're using a third party like myself or you're doing it yourself, you want to ensure that your status is all-star, because that means that you appear in more searches, and also it gives you a greater search functionality. We create engaging content. So it's really important when you're trying to build a relationship with a high net worth individual that they see you as proactive and a thought leader. What you don't want to happen is that you try and go onto LinkedIn after a period of time to connect with a high net worth individual, but your LinkedIn is outdated. You haven't produced any content for 2 years, and it won't reflect well on you. Essentially, you want to give yourself the best possible chance to secure a conversation with a high net worth individual. So you want to ensure that you're doing things properly. Appreciate there is some compliance issues with status updates and social media. But what we've done in the past is seeded content for a period of time, which has been approved by the compliance director, compliance officer, whoever that may be. So that shouldn't be too much of an issue. So we've touched upon identifying the high net worth individuals. We're responding to user engagement, creating the direct message. So what we do is we do the first initial message, the second message, and then after a period of time, if the individual hasn't responded, we then go into a bit more detail in using Wealth Monitor, as Florian said, identifying the hobbies, the interests, and when companies have held certain events, we've then got in touch with them via LinkedIn again to invite them to a targeted event, and they've attended the event by that way. Because again, clients who receive a lot of mail, i.e. post, that they may or may not respond. But again, LinkedIn has proven a popular channel to be responding to an event, and also it's a nice way of getting back in touch with the high net worth individual after a period of time, because we know from what we've seen that someone who's coming to wealth for the first time may take time. They may go on holiday for a month or so, and then certainly getting back in touch after a few months by a softer approach is a good strategy. So this is a bit more technical in terms of the actual integration with Wealth Monitor. So what we've actually done and do is create a piece of software which basically identifies and sifts the information from Wealth Monitor into a client portal, whereby on a daily basis the investment advisor can go in, see all their leads in the one place, and have a link through to the dossier in Wealth Monitor, along with a link into the LinkedIn profile that we've identified and searched for the individual. Furthermore, we also put on tracking, again using Wealth Monitor, to see any updates on that client. They get an email, and this summary is automatically emailed to the investment manager or the professional advisor on a daily basis, tracking their shareholder ID, which is from Wealth Monitor, their name, how much wealth they've come into, their dossier, and anything else. Really, we can tailor this to the needs and demands of the entity or the client. That's worked very nicely, because a lot of the investment managers appreciate having all the leads in one place in a very productive fashion, and so they don't have to source through Wealth Monitor. They then don't have to spend time searching on LinkedIn. The productivity from a staffing point of view does increase tenfold because we're doing all the groundwork for them, basically. Okay, so this is essentially how the interaction looks like, as I was just mentioning. So a daily email is sent to the investment manager. They click on the dossier to review. That brief is what they wanted. They click on the link to the profile link, and they can see the messaging exchanges of what we've delivered. They see the response on there and the status or the progress of the lead, and we can integrate to an external CRM system if need be. That piece of software can integrate, but that will just be a bespoke fee, I guess, and a discussion with the entity at the time. And finally, before I hand you back to Florian, we produce very detailed reports. As I said, the investment manager or managing director will get sent a daily report with all their prospects and a status update of how they're getting on with their journey with the high net worth individual. We'll send a monthly roll-up report to management or senior level advisors, and then another monthly report on the effectiveness of how our service is performing with a number of statistics.
Thanks, Mitch. Yeah, there's some really interesting work that we've done with a few clients, and I think it's fair to say that we're using LinkDebt here as an example because it's the project that we most do. But I know there's a couple of folks from the Germanic region dialing in today, and the equivalent systems there would, for example, be Xing. So it really applies. So, I mean, apart from some technical nuances, it really applies to any sort of professional network networking tool, if that makes sense. So we're thinking of more the effective client acquisition strategies now through Wealth Monitor. When I say through Wealth Monitor, this is more collection of, I guess, notes that we took over the last 10 years of what has worked well for our clients. And I guess areas where we seem to be most effective, I think it's fair to say, fall roughly into the three categories. The current internal network, the current external network, and what I call the great unknown, or what marketing professionals call the white space. But for the first two categories, you will already have some hugely valuable information in-house, be it through existing clients or existing networking entry points such as intermediaries. So we try to fill the gaps here and add some value there as well, but the majority of value really comes from data that you already have in-house. So what we simply provide is the trigger, namely a liquidity event, such as someone selling their business, and pointing in the right direction of your network, such as mapping out the network of the high net worth individuals. And the third one is slightly more tricky. It's more of a challenging one. So, for example, someone in the German Mittelstand, some small, medium-sized enterprise, who has been quietly beavering away for the last 20 years and is now finally selling his business for 20 million and sort of reaps the rewards of his lifetime achievement. But nobody ever has heard of him, right? He wasn't in press. He's not been living a lavish lifestyle. So how do you get in front of him? So these are more the challenging cases, but they reap huge rewards because not everyone is aware, not everyone goes after them. In both cases, though, you need a systematic approach on what data and triggers you look at, how much time you spend on prospecting, and what route to the prospect you choose. So let me give you a couple of examples on how our subscribers do that. Sort of, again, aligned with the previous slide, I was thinking of a couple of sort of more recent work that we've done. One of the subscriber we work with a large global bank who have a sizable chunk of the retail customers in the UK. And they use Wealth Monitor data and the liquidity event triggers to match against their existing retail banking clients and their premier segment, and to an extent also their corporate client data. And just from matching the data and contacting them to upsell into private banking at the time of the liquidity event. And last year, they've sort of shared with me they booked 180 million asset under management from retail clients alone. So they already know, they have the data internally, but they have no visibility on what's going on with these clients, because once the deal goes through, the assets not necessarily comes into that account, and they have no visibility on that the client essentially has had a significant wealth increase, and not being aware of that can actually hinder your relationships. If you're not aware of that, the client will just go elsewhere. The other example I can think of is a boutique wealth manager. They have very good relationships with lawyers, accountants, corporate finance boutiques, and investment banks. And we essentially show them who are the corporate advisors on the deal, which gets them an introduction to the client. In fact, we've done one campaign recently with them where we have identified beneficiaries connected to a particular investment bank. So we've identified about 1,500 high net worth individuals, and their combined wealth is worth £8 billion. So they then analyzed the data further to pick a top 100 list, which was worth around £1 billion, where they saw the best chances of introduction, and booked 80 million from that campaign alone. Now, not everyone has these relationships. I appreciate that. So another boutique investment firm we work with, they have a very good offering, but they're relatively unknown and they don't have strong relationships. So they go in completely cold by contacting the high net worth individual directly. So you would think that's not the best or the very popular approach with high net worth individuals, but we conducted interviews with high net worth individuals a few years back on client acquisition approaches, and most of them did appreciate firms making contact at the relevant time. And I think this is the key here. So it's a relevant time when there's a liquidity event, when they actually need advice from wealth managers, private banks, whatever it may be, or when they want to treat themselves to some rewards from our luxury sort of retail clients. So it's a pending liquidity event, as long as it's relevant to them. And this brings me back to what I said earlier. You have to have the background information to make the message relevant, rather than keep it in the broad and generic. So venturing more into the luxury retail space, some of our luxury retailers we work with would follow a similar strategy, going directly, but based it around events. So they use our intelligence on hobbies and interest and look at geographic locations to invite to exclusive events based around these hobbies and interests. And again, that sort of plays into a LinkedIn strategy. Events is an approach that is increasingly adopted by a lot of wealth management firms to add prospect to client events, because nobody sells these services better than a happy client at an event. You don't have to do any hard selling on that. So again, speaking of making it relevant, one of our subscriber jewelry company uses any sort of data point that makes it a little bit unique, such as birthdays, to send out an offer, gender, age, to make the communication relevant. A private jet firm that we work with identifies exclusively ultra high net worth, because someone that's worth 30 million is really not their target audience. So they analyze the ultra high net worth and their likelihood for frequent travel. So they look at business equities abroad or holiday homes abroad, and whether someone's non-domiciled, such as Europeans living in the UK. So if we have any private jet clients on the webinar today, I'm a German living in the UK. If you want to make a special offer, empty leg for free, I'm happy to take that. One example where our subscribers probably gone too far a little bit. I remember a subscriber when we hosted, a very young and eager user told me he turned up at a high net worth individual's doorstep with a raw sea bass from a very good fishmonger, because we had the intelligence that he's interested in seafood, and we also had the home address. So that was slightly weird, and maybe sort of crossed the line into stalking potential clients, and certainly didn't lead winning to a client. So I guess there's a limit to everything what you can do. Mitch, do you have any examples on how to sort of utilize the social media on client acquisition?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So I just wanted to do a slide really on the effectiveness and power of social media, just coming away just from the focus on LinkedIn and the feedback from a lot of high net worth and credible intermediaries that I deal with is that it's still very much a people business. You know, the differentiator is going to be, does that person like you, understand you, have faith in you? And the power of social media to distinguish yourself and your personality is very important. A lot of advisors are now have their own personalized blog, and I'd recommend that if you can do that, get your opinions on up-to-date topics, changes in the legislation, budget releases. You know, I wouldn't necessarily just send around your company budget release. Actually, give your opinion. And a lot of financial advisors are now adopting vlogs, video moving forward across social media is vitally important. And again, that will reflect your personality and your areas of expertise. Also, podcasts. There's been a big rise in podcasts through the wealth management industry. And again, that could be something to consider and potentially invite some of your clients who have business interests along, and via various methods, get that out across your company marketing. What I've actually found work very well for me is the use of Twitter, and connecting with different audiences. So I've managed to build up a number of clients within professional football, and that started through connecting with them on Twitter and engaging with them in more of a softer approach, and their professional advisors, their agents. So it really is, in terms of thinking about your marketing and client acquisition strategy through the use of social media, you need to come up with a clear plan, processes, strategy, and delivery. But certainly, as I said at the beginning, the modern day entrepreneur is consistently on social media, and they are choosing their advisors, and that comes to tax, legal, finance, which leads to ultimately where are they going to put their money through how you are viewed on social media.
Good. We've got one more slide on GDPR. I don't think there's a presentation these days that doesn't talk about GDPR. But just before I wrap up from my side, I hope that gives some food for thought. But I appreciate that these sessions are by no way sufficient to make really impactful progress. So please do contact us if you need a one-to-one session, either to Mitch directly, as you can see in the bottom of the screen, or if you need a training session of Wealth Monitor, get in touch with Mark, which is your relationship manager or heads of our relationship efforts, or if you need access to Wealth Monitor, have mislaid your username and password, just drop us an email on sales@wealthmonitor.com. GDPR, one of my favorite topics for the last 12 months.
Yeah, so I think it's a favorite topic for everyone at the moment. GDPR, obviously a big overhaul and change and a step up from the Data Protection Act. Of course, it relates to keeping personal data secure and safe. So personal data is defined to cover email addresses, phone numbers, and now even extended to include a person's IP address as well. So what does the GDPR mean for you? Well, it's important, of course, to be compliant by 25th of May, which is the deadline, because there are quite substantial fines. The maximum level of fines are up to 4% of global turnover, or 20 million euros, whichever is the highest. So it's important that all businesses and individuals that trade on a sole basis are compliant with GDPR regulations. So meeting the accountability requirements means much more than just establishing data protection policies and procedures. So what really should you be doing? So on the slide, you'll see that I've created a 5-step process for helping you to comply by 25th of May. So the first is knowledge. Now, it's important to understand how the GDPR actually applies to a particular organization. Now, this is likely to involve you conducting some sort of audit of your files that hold personal data, pseudonymizing the data, which will benefit from relaxations of GDPR fine impositions on you. So making sure that you know how GDPR applies to you is fundamental. The second point is putting someone else in charge, or putting someone in charge within the business itself. This is important because a data protection officer in the business would be responsible for defining procedures to ensure compliance with the new regulations. So this person will need to train employees, directors and contractors in the business about compliance procedures, and is also the point of contact for complaints or reporting a breach. Number 3 is checking your procedures, both internal and external. So the GDPR requires documented procedures for defining the legal basis for you using the data that your business acquires, delivering privacy notices, and acquiring explicit consent from people when required, and also managing access to data by users. So that's quite essential. What we also want to do is make sure that you define a quite a strict governance structure, and that includes making sure that you keep in mind what your processes and procedures are in relation to GDPR, and also ensuring that you have things like a privacy impact assessment, which would assess the risk of any proposed data breach, and also the risk of any new technological procedures that your business might implement to make sure that you're up to date with GDPR regulations. I know that we of course touched on LinkedIn, so I thought I'd just mention a little bit about how LinkedIn and GDPR interrelate. So connecting with an individual on LinkedIn is allowable, and you can connect with them, nothing wrong with that. LinkedIn is the data controller and has the primary responsibility for ensuring compliance with GDPR. And this includes communicating clearly to members how their data will be used, as well as being responsible for ensuring data security. Now, if a member on LinkedIn takes data off the platform or shares data with a third party, they then become the data controller and are responsible for then complying with those data protection laws. So from a member's perspective, people join LinkedIn with the expectation, of course, that members will communicate and network with each other. So essentially, day-to-day use of the platform is not impacted by GDPR. So whilst your marketing communications could be curtailed, your LinkedIn activity is not affected. And it's advisable, for at least from a short-term negative impact that a smaller mailing list can have. You should use LinkedIn as a priority to expand your network now before the GDPR regulations kick in. So I hope that's useful. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Kishan. Hopefully you're all still with us after the GDPR summary. But just to finish with a couple of slides from me. So thanks to Florian and everyone at Wealth Monitor for collaborating with us on this. So Fusion, we're an end-to-end consultancy company for private clients and entrepreneurs. I've mentioned the background of myself. If you want to find me on social media as an individual, you can type in Mitch the Taxman and you can see all the cool stuff we're doing on there. In terms of the LinkedIn processing and where we work with Wealth Monitor, that's via our Fusion digital service. So recently I've been out to Jersey to do a strategy day for the Overseas Fiduciary and Trust Company, and we're then going to assist some of the directors with their LinkedIn implementation. And I welcome the opportunity to arrange an initial meeting with any of you who want to explore or ask questions. We're happy to come in and do joint meetings with the team at Wealth Monitor as well. But equally, feel free to get in touch. My email's at the bottom, and I'll happily have a conversation with you. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Florian.
Thank you. And the recording of this webinar will be available in due course, should you wish to share that to any of your colleagues or any colleagues that couldn't make it today. Thanks very much. Have a nice afternoon.